Sher, we're wrapping it up. Our summer series is coming to an end. How do you feel?
I'm sad because then that means that school's starting soon.
I had the exact same thought. I thought, I'm so grateful we have spent so much time focusing on our freedom and the Revolutionary War, because now I can keep up with teenagers when they talk about it. So thank you. But I'm so sad summer is coming to an end.
Me too. How would you like to teach the little varmints?
I would not, but I feel it's kind of funny that you're ending the summer series on freedom when you now are not going to be free at all.
That's a really good point, Cydni.
I'm making my way through the drip, drip, drop.
Welcome to the Cydni and Sher podcast. We are so glad you're here.
For our 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, we were asked by our prophet for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to pray and to fast in gratitude for our religious freedom and for our Declaration and Constitution. So Cydni and I decided that we wanted to prepare and now reflect by studying a little more about our founding. And the last few months, we have talked about regular people from the American Revolution, famous people, and the cost of freedom.
But before you get into that, Sher, I want to know what your takeaways were from all of this. Because while you think about it, for me, a recent Sunday, I was in charge of the lesson and I'd prepared and it had nothing to do with the Revolutionary War, but a woman brought up the Revolutionary War. And I loved so much that I knew what she was talking about. I knew exactly what she was saying. I had just studied it. I had just learned about it. And I even had a quote that went perfect in my notes. Well, I never found them because you know how my notes are.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do know how your notes are.
I was like, somewhere in one of my notes, could be on my computer, could be in my phone, could be in one of the 5,000 notebooks that I have around the house. But I have a quote somewhere and I pulled it out of the back of my mind as best as possible. That was one of the most awesome experiences for me for this, is that it's become part of me that I could pull it up in my brain now, which says a lot. So I'm grateful for that, because I would have been like, the what? The what war? You're not even listening to the lesson. I haven't mentioned any war, but instead I was able to communicate words back.
Look at you. My little girl has grown up so big.
I know. I'm learning. It only took several decades.
Cydni, I think for me right now, and this could change tomorrow, but the biggest takeaway that I have is how faithful these people were. They were just so faithful. I'm also thinking about a text that my brother sent me. He said, so often we maximize the sacrifice of an elite few and ignore those who take the most brutal brunt. The revolution has the least amount of this caste approach. It truly took everyone to sacrifice equally for the war to reach the outcome it did, along with Providence. And I think that right there is what I'm thinking of, is that it really did take everyone. It took rich and poor and black and white and everybody in between. It took all of these faithful individuals. They all had to individually choose to do this. It took all these faithful individuals to sacrifice and remain faithful in order to win.
I wanted, Sher, to listen to what your brother said because it's so beautiful in text, but I'm so distracted looking at what my brothers have sent me, which is not anything like that. So, I mean, they did invite us to play fantasy football. Well, not me. The others were invited. They invited Rock.
Well, to be fair, my brother does not usually send such beautiful texts. They're usually a bit more snarky, but he really pulled through on this one.
It's beautiful. I love it.
The other thing that I've been thinking about is how did they have the strength and the ability to endure all that they went through? But then as I reflected on it, to find the answer to that question, it's really found in our first episode. That is when we talked about covenants and how the people who fought for our liberty and our agency, they made a covenant with God, and they were faithful and they were willing to endure because they fought with the assurance that God would help them. And because they stayed faithful, our founding fathers and mothers were allowed to see amazing miracles. They were able to see the divine hand of providence throughout the entire war to help them continue to sacrifice and endure all the trials that they were going through at the time. I had AI do a little bit of research for me, and I asked AI to make a list of how many miracles occurred during the American Revolution, And it gave me a list of about 50 topics that we could talk about today. Now, to be fair, a lot of them overlapped. It was like one event, but with different examples of miracles within that one event. But one thing that is very clear to me is in the American Revolution, God did not hold his hand. He wanted us to be able to make choices and to enjoy our religious freedom. And that is what we want to talk about today, is how God was in the American Revolution and he provided the miracles when they were necessary so that we could have our religious freedom and our liberty in general. But just to back up a little bit, this faith did not just happen. It took them a while to get to this point. The Pilgrims laid the foundation and they had to work from there. So the Pilgrims landed in the year 1620 and now it's 1775. It was a buildup to get to that faith and to honor the covenants that the Pilgrims made.
I love that idea. And I've reflected upon this recently, that even throughout the Bible, when there are these incredible miracles that take place, it's not just a sudden miracle. There's so much work and effort and action that leads up to the miracle. And I think I know that. But as we've studied the Revolutionary War, it's helped me to see a little bit better that when there's miracles that we love to talk about and mention in Sunday school, that there's so much effort and sacrifice put forth first before the miracle. And we know that, but we forget it. I forget this. I just want the miracle.
Yeah, me too. It would be a lot easier just to have miracle after miracle and skip the work part. But God wants us to do our part, and then we can appreciate the miracle more.
Maybe, but what if we just tried it out? What if we just tried out a miracle, then work?
I love the plan. I just don't know if God likes that plan.
I hope he's open to like just a discussion. Like, I get you have a plan that's been put forth for a long time, but what if we try out just like miracles first? I'd be like, I just want some money and I want someone to clean my house. And he'd be like, that's ridiculous.
I felt like you were kind of walking a thin line with Satan's plan there.
Like going away from everything we talked about, like the freedom. I'm like freedom from making your choices. I love freedom from.
This episode is definitely not going to be good if that's the take you got from the Cydni.
If everyone does things exactly how I say, I will be so happy.
Okay, going back to the point here. Because our founders laid that groundwork, and then they were willing to be obedient and stay faithful to God, I want to talk about just a few miracles that God performed in order for the United States to be a country. We've talked about a few miracles in past episodes, and today I only want to focus on two. I want to talk about George Washington's first battle as the American general and his last battle as the American general. So the first battle was at Boston. This is after Bunker Hill. Now George Washington is our general, and he decided he was going to kick the British out of Boston for good. And so he was trying to come up with a plan. And as he was putting his plan together, Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold, who we know is later going to be a traitor.
Ethan Allen, like as in the furniture store?
Definitely.
Same guy?
Yes, he started the furniture store much later, but he was part of the Green Mountain Boys, which I am sure you've heard of.
Yeah. Is that really the same Ethan Allen?
No.
I was like, I was joking, and now I sound amazing.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so clever, like the one by the mall.
This is where we are. This is what I have to work with.
Maybe we should do the same topic next summer.
Moving on. So those two, Ethan Allen and Benedict Arnold.
Not furniture store,
Not
Ethan
furniture
Allen.
store, no.
I knew.
You just keep telling yourself that. They were able to take a British fort. And then later, Colonel Henry Knox, he went to the fort and he took all the weapons, cannons, everything he could get his hands on, and he drug all that stuff over 300 miles to George Washington, who was preparing to attack Boston. Now, this is the cool part. On March 4th, 1776, once it got dark, Washington, his goal was to get the high ground overlooking Boston. So he snuck the cannons and his entire military into position. So this is how he did it. He got the wagons and he wrapped anything that rattled, squeaked, anything at all in hay. They even laid hay on the roads so things weren't bouncing around quite as much. Then, once they settled the noise down. The soldiers marched in with pre-made fortifications. So once they got up on the hill, they were just putting it together sort of like Legos, and they were good to go. So when the sun came up, we were all ready to go with the high ground overlooking Boston. This should have taken weeks, Cydni, and they did it in one night. When the British woke up the next morning, they could not believe what they saw. The British, led by General Howe, he wanted to attack immediately. He was like, okay, we've got to take care of this problem right now. But, Cydni, a huge windstorm made it impossible for the Navy to help out and get more soldiers there to help General Howe. So the British kept postponing and postponing. This gave the Americans more time to build even better fortifications and to recruit more soldiers to help them out. Finally, the British decided to just leave, and on March 17th, they all got in the boats and sailed to Nova Scotia. General George Washington and the crew were able to take over Boston without being in a real battle. Did they fire the cannons and guns? Sure they did, but was it an all-out battle? It never was. Washington said after entering the city of Boston, "I heartily pray that the hand of a kind providence may give happiness and prosperity to the town of Boston." Now, when Congress found out about the victory on March 25th, 1776, they declared a day of humiliation, fasting, and prayer, and they wanted that to be held on May 17th, 1776. In their proclamation, they said, "With one heart and one voice, humbly to offer up our prayers and supplications to Almighty God." They continued by saying, "Together with our sincere acknowledgments and offerings of praise for his mercies." And then they thanked God specifically for protecting the colonies, blessing the American army, and driving the British from Boston. Samuel Langdon, who was the president of Harvard at the time and also a local minister in Boston, said this: "May the children of Israel in this American wilderness never give up their liberty, nor forget the hand which has so wonderfully preserved them." This is what I think is so cool. Going back to the whole covenant idea, so many of our founding parents saw themselves as copying what the children of Israel did. They wanted to set up a country that was based on liberty and make a covenant with God that they would be faithful so that they could enjoy that liberty. This is what I'm talking about right here with this quote. May the children of Israel in this American wilderness never give up their liberty. This is how they saw themselves. They really wanted and were dedicated to making that covenant with God. Also, there were a lot of preachers in Boston that had a new theme after this miracle of Washington taking over Boston. They quoted Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 a lot, which says, "Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." This is what they were preaching in Boston and saying, stay faithful to that covenant and you will see miracles. They believed it. They believed in making a covenant, being obedient and faithful, and they believed the miracles would come. And this is the thing, Cydni, is they were worthy of it. They were worthy of those miracles to actually happen.
I love that. And I also love that we recently have been encouraged to believe in miracles and expect miracles. President Nelson was saying that at the end of his life over and over. And to have these group of people who did that and to see what took place should be encouraging to all of us. But I also must say, I wish that a gust of wind would help me in my direction. You know what I mean? Like, what if I was going the wrong direction in my life and God could just send the wind and knock me over a little bit instead of throat punch me? Maybe you tried the still small whisper that was like, "Hey, Sid, don't do that." And I was like, I'm not listening to that. I would prefer like walking to the fridge to eat, like crap at 10 p.m. if wind could just knock me over. I would fight it. I know I would.
Absolutely.
I'd get up. I'd crawl through the floor of the kitchen to get that ding dong, Little Debbie ding dong. I would. I'd put up a fight because I believe in Little Debbie the way they believe in their freedom.
I'm just going to ignore you even said that. All right. I want to talk about another miracle, and we're going to skip all the way to the end of the war. So that is how Washington opened the war, and this is how it's going to close. So this is the Battle of Yorktown. The war was just dragging on. It had started in 1775. It's now 1781. We didn't have enough money. Our soldiers often did not have enough food. They didn't have shoes. They're going without pay. And Washington's original plan was to attack New York. The British were in New York hanging out. They were led by Henry Clinton, and Washington wanted to get the British out of there. But then he had a better idea. With the help of French General Rochambeau, that really is his name, Cydni.
It's so good.
Rochambeau convinced French Admiral de Grasse to go to Chesapeake Bay. He was originally going to go to New York City, but Rochambeau convinced him to head towards Chesapeake Bay. Washington then left a few men near New York City and had them start to dig and build fortification to make it look like the Americans really were going to attack New York City. And General Clinton believed it. He bought it hook, line, and sinker. So he did not move. He stayed in New York. And then Washington took the rest of the army 450 miles south. Then on September 5th, 1781, de Grasse's fleet met the British Navy at the Battle of Chesapeake. Now, here's where it gets miraculous, Cydni. It's through a combination of the wind, the tide, and the British just messing up. The French are going to beat the most powerful navy in the entire world at this battle. Again, the wind and the tide worked out perfectly for the French. Now, the French had complete control over the Chesapeake Bay. So now this is why it's important. The British General Cornwallis was in Yorktown, Virginia, which is near Chesapeake Bay. And the reason he chose this location to, I guess you could say, set up camp is because it's an easy pickup spot for the Navy. And it was also an easy spot for the Navy to drop off soldiers so that they would have his back. But the weather and the French had a different plan. And now the British Navy is not going to be able to back up General Cornwallis. Shortly after the French victory, the Americans and the French armies trapped General Cornwallis in. So now he has Americans and French surrounding him with the ocean behind him, which at first he wasn't really worried because his plan was to have the British Navy come and get him. But they never came. He tried to wait it out. And while he's trying to wait it out, the Americans and the French just let him have it. And after weeks of the Americans and the French attacking General Cornwallis and his crew, his soldiers were starving to death. They were eating their horses, and the situation was hopeless for the British. So on October 19th, 1781, Cornwallis surrendered to George Washington. Washington would only accept total surrender. Cornwallis tried to weasel his way out of it, but Washington wouldn't have it. The surrender terms were pretty simple. Give the 13 colonies their independence, hand over your weapons, your flags, and leave. Washington's whole plan worked, but more importantly, the wind showed up at the right time, giving the French Navy the advantage. Providence showed his hand again. He had control of the wind at the beginning, and he had control of the wind at the end. And there are so many miracles along the way.
I just feel like we really need to think about this next time it's really windy. Someone could be having a miracle. So maybe you end up with a trampoline in your yard that's someone else's. Have you ever had that happen?
No.
Oh, me either. And so maybe we just need to consider, you know what? Your windy day could be someone else's miracle answered.
It's true. It really could. Now, General Washington and his orders for the very next day, he said, divine service is to be performed tomorrow in the several brigades and divisions. The commander-in-chief recommends that all troops not upon duty do universally attend with that seriousness of deportment and gratitude of heart which the recognition of such reiterated and astonishing interpositions of Providence demand of us. How he wanted to celebrate was not having a huge party, but by going to church and thanking God for their victory. 2 years later, in his letter to the States, he wrote, favorable interposition of Providence has been so often manifested in our behalf that he must be worse than an infidel that lacks faith. George Washington did not want us to forget how God intervened on our behalf so that we could have the liberty and the freedom that we have. And he had a front row seat to see miracle after miracle. He knew why we won this war. Now I'm going to go back to Yorktown. Congress agreed with what Washington said, and they proclaimed a National Day of Thanks in October. So the British surrendered in October, and we had a National Day of Thanks in October. Ezra Stiles, a minister from the American Revolution time period, as he was reflecting on the events that happened, He said, "Who can but see the finger of God in the late remarkable events of our American Revolution?" Minister, preacher, one after another, they all told their congregations where our victory came from, and the people believed it. They knew that the reason we won is because of God. They recognized how we won the war, and they were grateful to God for granting them the victory. This is what I think is so important, is they showed gratitude. They didn't just say, "Oh, good, I'm glad God intervened. We deserve it." They showed gratitude, and they constantly prayed and fasted and thanked God for their blessings that they were receiving. They knew where all those blessings came from. They made covenants, and they knew if they were obedient, God promised he would fill in the gaps. Not always in the way we like, but they knew that he would fill it in, and he did. And they got to see those miracles.
And they recognized them as miracles, which is another takeaway that I love so much, is that time after time, and I've said this before, historians will say luck or coincidence, but the men and women who wrote in their journals the history that they experienced called it miracles. They recognized God's hand and they prayed in gratitude for it. And I think that is such a beautiful takeaway for me for the Revolutionary War.
I absolutely agree. And I also feel like maybe it's just me, but I feel that there is a surge of people that really do want to know the truth. They really do want to know what happened in the American Revolution, and reading about and learning about these miracles and how and why they happened, to me is so hopeful to know that whatever situation we're in now, whichever way the wind is blowing, so to speak, Cydni, that God is the one in control. And that if we are faithful and obedient to the covenants that we've made, and we're willing to truly endure to the end, God will always have our back. He's always there for us. In 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 17, we have been promised, "Now the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty." That to me is one of the most powerful scriptures about where our liberty, our religious freedom come from. It is when we have the Spirit of the Lord with us, when we are willing to be obedient to him, then that is when we get to have our liberty. And this is what our founders knew and understood. They knew that being obedient to God, they would in turn be free. It worked for the children of Israel, and it worked for our founding parents.
Well said. Thank you for sticking around this whole summer as we've learned from Sher. Thanks, Sher. Thanks for teaching us stuff you already knew.
I did not already know all of
You
it.
had to have learned some new stuff. What is something new that you learned?
I thought Nathan Hale's name was
I
Nathaniel.
was gonna
Let's
say,
start
you
with
mean
that one.
Nathaniel. Yeah, you learned his proper name.
And I wanted to learn more about Mercy Otis Warren. And I had the story of Sybil Ludington. You tried to prove me wrong, but then you proved me right.
Yes, you're welcome. Well, I don't know. There's so many things I loved. I love the spies. I have most of the numbers memorized now. If ever that comes up, I'm ready to tell people George Washington was 7'11". I'm ready. And so that was really fun. And I just will forever talk about how the women were just treated so poorly. I like to bring that up now at our dinner table at least 3 times a week.
Cydni, you really need to let that go.
I think that I just want to use it when it serves me mostly. But this has been so fun. I've loved it. I never thought I would love American history. And so there is a miracle in my own life. The miracle in my own life is now the love I have for American history. I never would have thought.
You're melting my old history teacher heart, Cydni.
So you still got it, teacher Sher. You still got it.
I don't know about that.
We do challenge you to continue to learn. Don't just stop with our summer series. Just keep learning about all of this. And our challenge is going to come from a talk that was recently given for the 250th year celebration by D. Todd Christofferson. I'm going to just read to you some of the statements he made. I just highlighted my favorite parts of the very end of his talk. And he says this, and this is our challenge. If you are a person of faith, you have a critical contribution to make to our country and society. It is time to get involved and take a stand for religious freedom. Begin by becoming informed. Study the principles of the American founders and teach them in your families. Teach your family to cherish America's heritage of freedom. Teach them the importance of religion to our nation and society. Teach them to respect the faith of all people, even those with very different beliefs, and teach them that respecting religious freedom means tolerating religious beliefs, speech, and practices we disagree with. That is the price of asking others to respect our own freedom. Whatever your faith, our society needs your voice, your experience, and your goodness. Above all, as the Apostle Paul wrote, be an example of the believers in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, in purity. Whatever your religion, live your faith so that others will see your good works, experience your genuine love and friendship, and feel God working through you. I thought those words wrapped up everything beautifully.
This brings us to our final thoughts. As we celebrate 250 years of religious freedom and liberty, may we remember that it was built by ordinary men and women who made extraordinary sacrifices, who kept their covenants, trusted God through impossible circumstances, and refused to give up. They worked, they suffered, they prayed, and then they watched God do what they could not do alone. The people who lived through these remarkable events had no doubt where their blessings came from. As we face our own battles, may we have the faith to make and keep our covenants, the courage to do our part, and the humility to recognize God's hand in our lives. Miracles still require effort, sacrifice, and faith. But just as our founding parents learned during the Revolution, when we do all we can, God is able to fill in the gaps. And as Ben Franklin said, the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. Cydni and I know this is still true today. This is our prayer
From Cydni and Sher.
I'm forging my way through the tip top. I'm living my life through the drip drop. When eternity's plan, I just can't stop. I'm making my way through the drip drop.
Yeah, whatever, it's fine. Do I say anything else? From Cydni and Sher.
Or do you want me to keep blabbing?
I think you should keep blabbing. Ding, ding. I can't believe you don't know. You're a teacher. I don't think people are listening at this point right now anyway in the episode.
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
I'm still thinking about Ethan Allen. I'm like, I do need new couches.
Shut up.
I've never shopped there. I thought about adding he said to listen to our podcast, but I don't want to ruin the words. Just not going to say that actually. Nope, I am butchering this. Why can't I read every single time?
Just read.
Okay, do you want me to say it all over from the starting? Amen. Sorry.
Thanks for joining us.
We're so glad you're here.